minutes. Right now, though, it is National School Choice Week. What does that mean here in Baton Rouge? Well, I've got the perfect guy to talk with about it. That would be Ken Campbell from New Schools for Baton Rouge. Ken, welcome back, man. How are you?
Always good to be back.
I gotta spin this around. I got this pointed in the wrong direction.
There we go.
All right.
No, always good to be here. And School Choice Week, I think, is just a great time to be here. I've had the pleasure of being able to work on issues related to school choice for a long time now. And I just, the fact that we're able to give families, right, who otherwise would not be able to choose where and how their kids are educated, some options and the power to be able to do that is huge.
Yeah.
I think.
Looking back over the course of school choice or the history of school choice in Baton Rouge, we've come a long way in a short period of time.
Absolutely.
I mean, it hasn't been all that long.
Yeah. Well, Baton Rouge and actually the whole state of Louisiana, right? It was not that long ago where you had, children's charter, as one of the first schools, it may be the first school, right, to really get started in Baton Rouge. When I got here in 2007, we had a handful of schools. And today, look, we got 144 charter schools in this state.
Wow.
Educating almost 90,000 kids, 21 parishes. Like, whoever thought,
educating how many kids?
Almost 90,000 kids.
Almost 90,000
Almost 90,000 kids. It is unbelievable. I think the popularity, the performance, like all those things, and parents want this ability to choose. And in many cases, there are parents who otherwise would not be able to choose, right? They would have to go to some neighborhood school that they were assigned to. But what we see consistently is when you open a charter school, you make commitments to parents and you deliver on those commitments, parents come in droves and they stay.
Yes, they do. And where we're at right now, over the course of the history of charter schools and school choice in Louisiana, where we're at right now, we're kind of transitioning from that popularity phase to the accountability phase. We've got numbers now showing what's working. And I mean, not everything's working.
Not everything's working.
Most of it is. So
really
what are some of the highlights?
Yeah, really encouraged by what we're seeing. And I think for me personally, Brian, like I'm always interested in those schools that are doing the hardest work. Right. And how are those schools doing? And one, I'm always pleased that we have people who say, I want to come and I want to try to do that.
Right.
It's not always going to work. But the fact that people say, I want to do that, they don't want to take the easy job. They say, I want to go where it's most difficult. And we're seeing some schools do remarkable in that space. I think Prep, for example, is doing a phenomenal job with their work. And, CSAL has, done a phenomenal job with CSAL and Madison Prep. And we're starting to see, real growth and traction with schools that have, 85, 90, 95%, economically disadvantaged students. We are starting to see some real success. Not all, right? So we got some work to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? There are, in Baton Rouge, there are about 21,000 students in DRF schools. Some of those are in charter schools, right? And part of our belief is, you got to perform, at the end of the day. So we're pushing those schools to get better. We think they will. We think we have the right set of operators here, but we certainly have work to do in order to be able to reduce that number overall.
What happens if a charter school is a DRF? Because this is an important part of this was an important part of the discussion at the beginning.
Absolutely.
And it's an important part today.
Yeah. So, across the state, charter schools have continued to close over time. Yeah. They just don't do well enough. They don't do it well enough financially. They don't do well enough academically. This school board has closed schools, right? And I think in almost every decision they've made the right call in that. The state certainly has closed schools, and we have supported that, for the most part. We really do feel like at some point in time, you have to look at performance, and if you are not doing better, if you are not growing kids significantly, then, you got to go.
The argument against charter schools from the outset, one of the arguments was you're going to kill the public schools.
Yeah.
I think we're at a point now where we can look back and say that's not the case.
Yeah, well, not only are we not killing public schools, but I actually think we are enhancing what's going on with public schools, right? I think not as much competition as I would call co-opetition, right? This whole idea that we can do well, you could do well, and I'm hoping that we have, even elected a new school board that will say we need a variety of different programs and, that do this a different way, that impact our families in different ways, right? And I think that's really where we are right now. And I'm hoping, and I think we got a superintendent in some regard, to where we can start to share more lessons, right? We always talk about that, but we got to be about it.
Ken Campbell from New Schools for Baton Rouge, our guest. Yeah, it's one of those things I never understood the argument from the outset.
Yeah.
If you got 30 kids in a class, and 5 of them want to go to a charter school, then you're now going to have 25 kids in a class. And how many times have we been told that teacher to student ratio is important? Well, you've just improved that ratio by removing 5 kids from that equation. So they're going off to do their own thing. You can now help get more one-on-one time with the students that remain.
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, it does cause some financial pressure, right? It is designed to say we have to think about this differently and how do we serve all kids, and that we don't, as a school board, have the exclusive right to serve all kids. Like, educating kids is a privilege. Being able to, opening schools that parents want to go to and want to be a part of, that to me feels like the job of the school board. And if those schools happen to be charter schools, that's great. If they happen to be traditional public schools or, Superintendent Narcissus focused choice schools, whatever that is, we got to create these options and we got to allow parents to choose the best place for their kid, because just because we think it's good doesn't mean that parents do. And I love the fact that parents are voting with their feet every day.
Absolutely. We're talking with Ken Campbell. It is National School Choice Week. Ken, what does that mean for parents out there that want to start voting with their feet?
Yeah, well, I think a couple things. So, we have charter schools, right, which I think are very popular with parents, but we also have a scholarship program or a voucher program here, which allows low-income families to be able to take their money and be able to go to a private school. Some parents want an education that might be a religious education. Some parents may want a Catholic education. Some parents may just like this small private school that's not far from home. And again, giving parents who otherwise wouldn't be able to make those choices the ability to do that is cool. So we have like 58, almost 6,000 parents or so across the state, right, who are exercising that option, and they're enrolling actively, which is great. We have a tax credit program, which has about 2,500 kids in it. Parents are continuing to seek out the best place. And the other thing that I really like, Brian, is that parents sometimes are making multiple choices, right? So they make a choice, and it might not be what they thought it would be. So you get the ability to go back or go somewhere else, right? So our parents are increasingly savvy, increasingly sophisticated choosers. There was this narrative that, you're just going to hoodwink parents or whatever. No, parents know when they're being treated right. They know when their kids are learning, and I think that's really important.
More so when it comes to their kids than when it comes to themselves.
Absolutely.
Honestly.
Absolutely.
All right, and you said some parents just want a Catholic education. That'd be me. I want my kids to have a Catholic education. That's why I send them to Catholic schools. What else is in store for National School Choice Week? Are there open houses, events, that sort of thing?
So a lot of schools are doing events. They're all school by school in Louisiana, but we have a lot of events coming up. I actually think real quick, I think maybe later on this week is the deadline for parents who want to enroll in the voucher program for next week, for next year. I think that's coming up on the 27th, so parents have an opportunity to choose that. And then, not a school choice week event, but, like a big, kind of EBR school board meeting going on tomorrow night, where there'll be, voting to renew some charter schools, right? So we have some charter schools up for renewal. So, while you guys are going to DC Mardi Gras, I'm going to hang back to try to make sure that part of the agenda goes as well as we need it to. We have 5 schools that are up for renewal. And I am hoping that with these 5 schools, when I think about the schools and what they do, that we actually will get, kind of good votes out of the board for those schools.
When it comes to this renewal, when it comes to this process, how much of it is just straight numbers and how much of it is argument? Well,
I think it's a little bit of both. I think, the question is, so right now we have 4 of the schools that are up for renewal are schools that open in 2018. So those schools only have really 1 year of non-COVID data, right? They had 2018, 2019.
Right.
And then everything else is COVID or no test in 2020, simulated scores in 2021. And although we got scores that counted for last year, if you remember last January, this time we were all talking about Omicron and freaking out. So the number of days that kids missed and teachers, it was amazing. So I think those 4 schools that just opened in 2018, 2019 should all be in the place of getting a 3-year charter renewal. We just don't know enough yet about their performance. And I think it would be a mistake to punish any school for COVID performance, right? So I'm hoping that they're looking at this going, you know what? We need to give these schools more time to be able to really get their traction back post-COVID. And I think that's what everybody is doing. And I think that's a very reasonable, place to put it for these schools.
We got Ken Campbell from New Schools for Baton Rouge. That's coming up tomorrow night, right? And the renewal process, you would have to, the way COVID hit every school. It wasn't just charter schools. So if you're a charter school is just getting started, you don't have your feet underneath you, and then you get your feet taken out from under you when they're not even there yet.
And Brian, the impacts of COVID were very inconsistent, right? And so when you're talking about some schools who have upwards of 90%, economically disadvantaged students, right? We know the impact on those students was far greater than it was in some other communities.
No, absolutely.
We have schools that only work with kids with disabilities, right? And we know virtual, online learning like that. We have schools that are doing some of the hardest work, again, in charter schools of these ones that are up. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm really hoping, and, as we talk to school board members, the important thing, I think, is we need to find out how good these schools can be or how bad they can be, right? But we shouldn't be making that assessment based on COVID performance.
All right, as it is National School Choice Week, and we are talking with Ken Campbell, the head of New Schools for Baton Rouge. Let's talk about charter schools in Baton Rouge for just a minute in terms of the variety that's out there right now. Just kind of inform parents about what is available that you might not expect.
So a couple of things I think are really cool. So one, again, we have a school in South Baton Rouge at the Emerge Center, and the Emerge for a long time was a place where parents, it was only a pay program. So parents who could afford it would go and be able to get their children's services, primarily kids with autism. Mm-hmm. Well, in 2018, they opened a charter school so that they could give parents who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford it to get their kids into Emerge.
Okay.
So it's a small school, but a family who is really struggling with a student with autism, there's a place now that you could go, right? That won't break the bank, right? To get your kid into a really good school, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that is, I think, really cool and interesting. We have Discovery Health, so partner with Oxner. That is opening this August, right? So really excited about the work they've been able to do in that partnership with Oxner. I think that's a school, for example, that's consistent with the superintendent's focused choice vision, right? So excited about that. I love the work that a school like Collegiate is doing. So Collegiate is a high school program, a high school charter school program. So they're taking in ninth graders. And, right now we probably have, the vast majority of our eighth graders going to ninth grade are below basic in both reading and math. But they're taking those kids and making a huge difference with those kids, getting them on track for careers in college. We have the IDEA schools, which is really pushing all kids towards college and accelerated learning.
Right.
They have, at IDEA, for example, 100% of eighth graders take Algebra 1, right? In non-selective schools, it's usually ninth grade, so they're accelerating them that way. Mm-hmm. And then all of their ninth and 10th graders also take AP courses, right? So you have kids that are taking more advanced coursework, getting opportunities that really prepare their minds for college. So exciting. I mean, we got some great stuff going.
Raise the bar and then clear it, as it were. And you didn't even get to the Helix, the
aviation school. It's
so much ground to cover. Absolutely, it is. Well, it is National School Choice Week. He is Ken Campbell from New Schools for Baton Rouge. Yeah, we're going to keep our eye on that school board meeting tomorrow night as the number of schools are up for renewal. In the meanwhile, we always appreciate the time, man.
Absolutely, really appreciate it.
Absolutely, we will talk to you talk to you very,
very
point
soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's from DC. It's a blast. I'll miss you guys, but I got work to do.
All good. We appreciate it. We got a break here. We got